Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. No special announcements, so let's jump right into it. First up is kind of a quick and easy one. Stone Age Gamer is now selling Longbox case replacements for the Sega CD and the Sega Saturn, and I guess also the PlayStation 1 Longboxes, if you don't mind them not quite matching up the same. And that in itself isn't too big of a deal, except as far as I know, the only way to purchase these up until now are in 10 packs. And a lot of people out there, including myself, don't need 10. I only need like one of them to replace a really broken one that I have. So while I certainly wouldn't spend the money on shipping just to order one of these from Stone Age Gamer, and it is more cost effective to order them in 10 packs, the next time I buy anything from them, I'm going to throw one of these in the cart as well, just to kind of add this to it. So, obviously I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. If you really want to just buy one replacement case, obviously go for it. But I just thought it was worth talking about because I know a lot of people order from them, and a lot of people probably have just one case that they need replacing, and they don't really need a whole 10 pack. So if you need just one or two, it's definitely more cost effective to do it this way. Or if you need 10, I would just click on the Amazon link in here as well. So Longbox case replacement fans, here you go. Now there's another option. This next one is both really interesting and could be helpful, but is also weird, and I'm a little wary of it. So I really think it's important to take a moment to go through and explain exactly what this is and how it might help anybody listening. So there is a quote-unquote new combo player that's a VHS and DVD player with a DVD recorder being sold for $200. And it's definitely important before we even talk about this to explain what this is and how you could find them currently. So there are a bunch of dime a dozen combo players like this where they share the same power cord, but the VHS and the DVD player side each have their separate video outputs. So it's essentially like two players. Then there's another bunch out there that do share the same outputs and even output component video from the VHS side. And you're obviously not going to get some big jump in quality. It's probably just composite converted over or something like that. But it's very handy because it's one set of power and video cables and audio for two devices. Now, there's also a bunch of players out there that are combo players that could all output over HDMI. And once again, this is not some miraculous way to get high quality HDMI video. It's still basically a composite to HDMI converter. Like those crappy ones that I say never ever use for video games, it's perfectly good to use for VHS players. And they're not going to make it look better than a tape, but it will totally work and make your life easier if you really want to just play these, or I guess capture them and have just HDMI to worry about. Now, all of the ones I just mentioned can be found very cheap everywhere, and while occasionally you'll have some crazy scalper throw them up for a ton of money on eBay, you could still find them very cheap everywhere you could find these things. Thrift stores, Craigslist, even eBay, whatever. However, the ones out there that can record on DVDs are going for insane prices. And I'm pretty sure it's because of the workflow. You take your old VHS home videos and you put it in a DVD-R, you hit play, you hit record, you walk away, you come back, you drop that DVD in your computer, you press a button, it's ripped to your hard drive. And while at first ripping it twice might seem convoluted, it's actually so easy for most people out there. It doesn't involve a capture card or video settings or any of the things that would really confuse somebody that's never done any kind of capture or conversion before, whereas something like this is you just press a couple of buttons and you don't even think about it. Absolute worst case scenario is too much of the tape gets recorded, so you have a bunch of empty space afterwards. Whatever. It either just takes up too much space on your hard drive or you find a way to cut the video later. Most of us nerds could do that in 2 seconds. Even the ones that have to learn, that's a very easy process, just chopping the video. You could totally free software does that. So I completely understand why something like this might be desirable for people, including my fellow nerds that know exactly how to capture their tapes, and they just don't want to do it. They just, it's old home movies, and while it would be nice to get the best quality possible, you're not going to improve them very much, if at all. So I could totally see a bunch of nerds that just don't have much time on their hands use a method like this to rip their home videos, and then just using virtual dub to cut them to size at the end or something like that. So fairly easy workflow, all things considered, and probably one of the least time consuming you could imagine. Now, all of that's cool. So I should be very excited about this. I should be saying, all right, $200 isn't cheap, but it's way cheaper than buying a used one. Except the company that's selling these is lying about one of two things. And that always drives me crazy. It makes me lose all trust when it's opened with a lie. And it makes me question what else is then a lie. So they're claiming, and I'll read word for word, and I took screenshots of the website to prove in case they change it after the fact, but their quote is, "We literally took our own money and became the only company in the entire world with a factory making a brand new VCR and DVD combo. We created a special supply chain that allows you to buy your rad VCR direct from our factories. That means you can now have access to the only brand new VCR and DVD combo in the world." So a small family-owned company was able to invest their own money to start a brand new factory to produce these things from scratch for $200. That's definitely a no. I mean, that's got to be a lie. And the other side of this is the picture that they showed is very clearly a Magnavox ZV and then a bunch of models after it. It's a Magnavox VCR DVD combo that was manufactured by Funai, an OEM manufacturer. So basically a company, a big factory that will make things in 100,000 quantities and then sell them to different companies to put their own cases and their own labels on it. And that's why they're able to manufacture something that could be sold for a profit for 200 because they're making them in such giant quantities. So it's kind of odd to me that they're either lying about it being new. They're definitely lying about starting up a factory to build these. It's impossible to do it for $200. And I just don't understand why. Because they could have just said, hey, we contacted Funai and found out that they had a warehouse filled with new old stock players from, it looks like the sticker that they're showing on their own website, by the way, says October of 2012. So there's some 10-year-old VHS DVD combos that may have hit the trash. We're going to slap our label over the Magnavox label and sell it to everybody for a fair price. They'd be heroes. Everybody would be celebrating. Like, hey, that's great. Keep it up. What else can you find in these factories? What else can you rebrand and make some of your own money, but get us stuff for cheap? So definitely buy this at your own risk. I really considered buying one. Not that I would ever really use it. I have a bunch stacked up somewhere that are very similar. I might even have this same model, the original Magnavox model, somewhere as well. But I was really curious to see what the lie is. Are they really going to ship, as they pictured on their website, a Magnavox VHS DVD combo with a label that says October 2012 manufactured by Funai? Or is the picture a lie? Are they actually manufacturing something from scratch and miraculously selling it for $200? And they just threw up a generic picture to have pre-orders up? I don't know. My bet is definitely the first one. Nothing else would make sense other than finding new old stock. So if you're into ripping old VHS tapes to digital, this is certainly a decent way to do it. If you were looking to purchase a used one for an insane amount of money, I would recommend starting with this instead, because you could always use a credit card and then go through your credit card company if this turns out to be a scam or something else. Certainly way safer than trying to deal with buying an expensive used one that may be falling apart. Or maybe these are used. Maybe they're finding old Magnavox players and refurbishing them and putting metal casing on them to make them look new. I have no idea. That's all speculation, but I just figured the entire story was hopefully entertaining and worth listening to, because you might need one of these, or you might just laugh at a story of a bunch of liars lying about something. I don't know. Or maybe, I don't know. There's a miracle and they really are pulling this off and I'm going to get sued for calling them liars. I seriously doubt that, which is why I'm comfortable saying this publicly like this. So check out their own website for all the proof that you need. I kind of summed everything I just set up in the post that I wrote. And if anybody buys one, please post pictures of the front, the back, and even pop it open and post pictures of the insides, and maybe we could all decipher if they're new, old stock, like I think, or if they're used. Pre-orders have just opened for a brand new memory card for PlayStation 1s that offers a ton of features. The card works by inserting into the PlayStation just like a regular memory card, and it runs off of micro SD storage and creates a virtual memory card on the micro SD for every single game that you load into the PlayStation. And on top of that, 1 gigabyte of storage equals about enough space for 8,000 virtual memory cards. Not 1 terabyte, 1 gigabyte. So essentially the cheapest possible micro SD card on the market, including ones you probably have in a drawer somewhere, will absolutely cover you for all of your PlayStation needs. But it also has features like it'll be able to back up your existing memory cards to it, which is really great. You could use the buttons on it just to cycle right through, and that way you could just select whichever your game is, load that up, and it'll automatically load with the disk that you use. So it really is one memory card for every single game. No more swapping back and forth between different games. And also, it'll integrate with the X Station so that it'll automatically load the corresponding virtual memory card whenever that game is loaded in the X Station, which I think is pretty awesome. There's a whole bunch of other features like Wi-Fi connectivity and a few things even planned in the future that involve a web UI for it, as well as ability to share saves with your friends and stuff. But overall, I think the extra features are probably going to be things that most people think are really cool, and a lot of people will embrace them, but most of the people who purchase these will probably just use it because it's one memory card for every game, and you could back up and restore your saves on it, which I just think is such an important thing to so many people. I know a lot of people that have gone out and bought cartridge readers to make sure to copy their save games from their original cartridges from when they're a kid, and those can be pricey. So something like this that both backs up, restores, and is functional all at the same time, I think is really worth the money for a hardcore PlayStation fan. Now, if you're just a casual user that wants to play arcade-style games and stuff like that, it's probably not worth the cost, but if you're somebody that uses your PlayStation with a lot of save game files, it most likely is. You could pre-order it from 2 places, from Castlemania or from 8bitmods.com if you're in Europe. That might be easier depending. So check out the post for links as well as a few more details on the product. Beast and I just did a live stream checking out the Mega SD expansion adapter, as well as its features, its compatibility, and some questions we had about it. Now, to back up for a minute, for anybody unaware, this expansion adapter allows you to use the Mega SD ROM cart into the side expansion slot of Genesis 1 or 2s. And the reason for this is you're not able to load CD games if your 32X is plugged in, which means if you have a setup that you constantly leave your 32X connected, maybe your cabling is that way, or maybe you just play a lot of 32X cartridge games, you're not able to boot Sega CD games at all without removing it. Or, of course, now 32X CD games won't work at all. So if you're in that scenario, picking up one of these expansion adapters might actually be pretty easy for your workflow, because when you play the ROM for cartridges, you plug it right in the top, and then when you're playing discs, you plug it on the side, and it allows you to access the 32X CD library. And it worked pretty much exactly as expected. And we also went through and played every 32X CD game, which was kind of interesting because I hadn't played a lot of them. That's my only quote-unquote complete collection that I own, is I have every 32X CD game that was officially released. I didn't get the reprint of Surgical Strike, which looked neat, but I didn't pick it up. But I haven't really played many of them because most Sega CDs I own don't really work. I think I've had 4 or 5 over the years, and they were kind of finicky. My CDX works really well, but I just never really sat down and kind of gave it a try. So we were able to flip through and do that with this, and it worked perfectly. We went through, you're able to switch discs very easy by pushing the button on the side. Some games that we played were terrible, like Surgical Strike. Some were kind of funny, like the Scottie Pippen game. And I actually was kind of impressed with Fahrenheit. I thought it looked really good, although it didn't sound as good as the Sega CD version, which is weird. And I've heard people talk about that before. I don't know if they messed up the sound on it or what, but that was not a result of the ROM cart or the adapter. It was just kind of the way it is, even with originals. And I mean, the only other thing to add about it is the quality of the 3D print was much better than expected. So, respectfully, whenever I buy something that's 3D printed, especially from somebody that doesn't have a business 3D printing stuff, I just expect what you would normally see, and I'm totally okay with that. But the quality of it was pretty cool. So, overall, if you're interested in what this might be like, or if you want to watch Beast and I go through the 32X CD collection and then some Sega CD games just in contrast, absolutely check out the live stream. We also did all the troubleshooting and testing that you might want to know. Like, it does not work with the Crix version of the Mega EverDrive Pro. ROMs don't show up at all. We kind of went through and we did everything that we would have done in a formal video, but we had a lot of fun just hanging out and doing it there. They are still available for pre-order. Now, the last time I talked about them, the pre-order sold out like immediately. So Mobius then said he was going to open up a second wave, and this will probably be the last batch that he makes of these, just because obviously they're not something that everybody needs. It's only if you really want to play the 32X CD games from the Mega SD, or if you have your workflow set up, like I said before, where you want to switch the ROM cart between them. So if you were planning on buying one, now is pretty much your last chance. If you just wanted to see what it was like, please check out our live stream. And I definitely want to do more live streams. I always have so much fun doing them. That could have very easily turned into a higher production video, but I think in cases like this, the info that we talked about is either the same or maybe even a little more fun than a higher production 15-minute video, because we really get to spend some time with the games, and that also really put the Mega SD through its paces while running it from the side adapter. So expect a lot more live streams. I kind of think I'm going to concentrate the next few months on some higher production like bigger scope videos that I've been wanting to make for years now, and fill in the gaps between those with live streams and kind of see how that goes. It's always hard juggling the YouTube algorithm, but I always try to do a mix of what I'm happy doing and what will be the best for the channel and the website itself. So let's all cross our fingers and hope that all works out. And if you ever see it pop up, I never really know when I'm doing these live streams. It's rare that I announce them beforehand, because I don't even know I'm doing it usually until the day of. But I usually tweet it, and then of course, when I go live, you get the notification there as well. So hopefully, if you're around for these, you can join, and I will always make them available afterwards for anybody that wants to watch. Alex, aka ArcadeTV, has just posted a wiki that chronicles how he makes some of his MSU-MD patches, and I've actually been getting a lot of questions from people lately that want to know how to make their own, and this is exactly what you would need to get started. So, if I'm understanding correctly, what Alex has done is created a section on a wiki that first kind of goes through what video game music is and how to create it on the Genesis, should you want to do that. And then on top of that, if a game has already been patched for MSU-MD, he walks you through how you're able to add your own versions of the soundtrack to that. I don't believe there's a guide up for how to patch the games themselves, and I think that does get more into ROM hacking and less into music creation. But basically, if a game that you're interested in has already been patched and you just want to add a different soundtrack to it, he'll kind of walk you through what that is. And to step back a moment, MSU-MD is kind of similar to what Terra Onion did with MD Plus on the Mega SD, but it was created by Crix, and it was also created with complete original hardware in mind. So if you patch a Genesis game for MSU-MD, what you're essentially doing is telling the Genesis no longer no longer look at the ROM itself for the main video game tracks, and look for the disc in the Sega CD. And as a result, you could just use a Genesis and a Sega CD with either the cheapest ROM carts or even the single flash ROM carts that are out there. You don't need something like the Mega EverDrive Pro or the Mega SD. Or alternatively, if you don't have a Sega CD at all, you could use those two ROM carts and Mister as well. Using it on Mister is slightly different. You have to rename the Mega Drive ROM cart.rom and then launch it as if it were a Sega CD game, but then it also works perfect on the Mister as well. So overall, everything about this is kind of awesome, because Alex has been working on a bunch of very cool soundtracks for Genesis games. My personal favorite whenever CD quality music is attached to something like this is when it's close to the original but not quite. So some good examples are Alex already worked on getting the Street Fighter II Champion Edition music along with the Gabriel Pyron Anniversary Edition hack together. So essentially, you're playing a really a kind of tweaked version of the Genesis game with the actual arcade music. Same thing with Outrun and a few others. And one of the other games he did was Cheeky Cheeky Boys, which is a game that was I believe was on the TurboGrafx CD and was known for having really good music. And now the Genesis version of that through the MSUMD plays the TurboGrafx music. So, a lot of people out there really do appreciate replacing things with the orchestral sound versions or with, modern replayings of them or something like that. And I think that's awesome. And I do think that if you're in the mood for that, it could really enhance the experience. But generally speaking, my favorites are stuff like I just mentioned. But the beauty of things like this is there's no right or wrong answer. If you like any of this, now you could check out Alex's wiki page or even his GitHub page where he has all of the audio stuff if you just want to use his existing work and just download them and play the games that are already out there with the soundtracks that are already out there. So thank you to Alex. Thank you to everybody that helps out with these. I strongly recommend checking this out if you're even slightly interested. And once again, the MSUMD can run on the Mega EverDrive Pro, on the Mega SD, on the Mister, on a standard ROM cart with a Sega CD, or basically any way to boot a basic ROM with a disc in the Sega CD as well, and with Genesis Plus GX, the very latest release, which I believe you could only run through RetroArch. I don't think you could do that on the Wii yet, but I could be wrong. I haven't emulated on the Wii in years, so I could be wrong about that one. But either way, it's all of this is just very cool and awesome news for fans of Genesis audio. Ronnie just posted a review of the independent Genesis game Xump 2. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Xump 2 Back to Space. And it looks like a pretty neat puzzler game. Those usually aren't my favorite style, but I kind of got back into them a little bit more when I played Nicole's Space Ava. I found myself really sucked into that one. So it looks like something that I would like to try out. And the good news is you can. The company Retro Guru has made the ROM file available for anybody to download for free to try out. The link is right there, and I always really love when companies do that. And for myself personally, whenever I take the time to download a game like this that is also for sale, if it's a game that I like and I'll play more than once, I always buy it because I always really want to support developers and really give back so that people will create more cool stuff for the Genesis. And, very respectfully, if I download a free game and I don't like it, I don't pay for it. Sorry. Overall, though, Ronnie's review was pretty detailed. Overall, the artwork was cool. It was more reminiscent of the very early Genesis games, so a little bit more minimalist, but I kind of like it. It's kind of like when Genesis games first started being released, the artwork was a little bit like a transition over from the Master System stuff, but based off of dark colors instead of that white checkerboard pattern that all the Master System games had. The cartridge was a green shell that's kind of neat, but unfortunately it doesn't have a beveled edge. So if you own a ROM cart, it's probably best to use the ROM for this and then purchase it if you're a collector that really wants to have something nice on your shelves and stuff like that. The game, I believe, costs just about $30 after the translation, and it seems pretty cool. I highly, highly recommend checking out Ronnie's review if you're into puzzlers at all, or if you just want to look at some pretty interesting new homebrew for the Genesis. And apparently it also has excellent music, and the puzzles are ramped up in their challenge in a fair way. So it's easy to jump in and start playing, but as it goes on, it gets more challenging the right way. It's not like 4 easy ones and then an impossible one right after it or something like that. So overall, I think it's pretty cool that more games like this are being released, and I'm definitely going to try it out myself at some point. So for more info, please check out the post. And speaking of Sega Genesis homebrew, another game from the same developer of Arcagus Revolution is being teased. That's basically a 3D mech simulator for the Genesis, and the graphics look really impressive. Certainly much better than I would expect on the Genesis, and to be honest, I would have loved if games like Zero Tolerance could have used whatever it is that they're using to improve the graphics like this a bit. There as far as I know, isn't any release date or any beta available yet, but Ray had a pretty detailed post getting into exactly how it works, and how the team is able to create such amazing graphics on such limited hardware, respectively speaking. So not really much more to say, but in all honesty, I just think that stuff like this is super impressive, and I'm always really, really interested to see what new developers could do with older hardware. And very often, running in the constraints of older hardware really forces people to get super creative in how they could do whatever it is they're trying to accomplish. And the end result is often very interesting. So definitely check this one out. I'll certainly be following the project and we'll be posting any other updates. And there's a few other things that we haven't gotten around to writing this week about basically new games for old consoles that do things in a very unique and different way. And we'll get to those as soon as we can. But it's a very, very, very cool time to be a retro gamer and have all of this awesome new stuff available to you. Here's a quick update to a post that Smoke Monster did about a year ago. Almost exactly a year ago, actually. And the post was about adding a reverse polarity protection diode to an Atari Jaguar's power input. So the Jaguar can use the same power supply as the Genesis 1, so it's strongly recommended just to get one of the triads. I personally use one of the higher amperage ones just because you could use it on everything that fits a Genesis 1 power supply without any worries. However, unlike a lot of other consoles, the Jaguar doesn't have any polarity protection in it, which means if you were to grab the wrong power supply and the barrel fit, but the positive and negative were reversed, you could blow out your Jaguar. So if you were going to be modding your Jag anyway, it's probably a good idea to just do this just to add some protection. And there was a different revision of the power supply that Smoke had not stumbled across until recently, so he just updated the pictures to show that as well. And this is just one of these things that it's kind of good practice, and I certainly wouldn't run out and do it unless you were going to open your Jag anyway. But this is certainly something that modders should consider. So if you have somebody bringing a Jag to you for recapping or for any other work, I would definitely offer this service as well, just to be safe. You know, it doesn't hurt anything and it could protect it, so might as well. But thanks to Smoke for updating this, and hopefully someday we'll have a wiki that we can store all this information in. Go ahead and flame me away in the comments. I totally deserve it. Before I go, I just want to give a shout out to Sorg, the person who's leading the Mr. Project. Last week, I answered his question of, do people want 1080p 5X? And my answer was, yes, they do. And if you could possibly add a way to shift the image vertically, that would really cover all use case scenarios. And within like an hour or two of the post going live, it was added to many cores, and I think almost every console core has it added now, which is really impressive. The other thing that I just thought was awesome was the vertical orientation worked out perfectly. I tested it. I showed a small clip of it here on Twitter, but I also, after I did this, I went and tried other games, and it was so intuitive and easy to figure out. I turned on vertical crop, which did the 1080p 5X mode. I adjusted the image so that Zelda: A Link to the Past fit perfectly. Then I went over to Super Mario World, and I went, well, that doesn't look right at all. Went back in the menu, pressed the button a couple times, and now it's centered perfectly, and it just took like 2 seconds for each one. So I personally think it's an awesome feature, but my favorite part about this, if you don't like it, it's not on by default. If you don't like it, if you don't think it's a good idea, you don't have to do anything. So if you do want it, it's very easy to hunt. Just go right in the menus and turn it on. If you don't want it, don't worry about it. It's not being forced in your face. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Sorg, and also just a reminder that he does have a Patreon, and he does put an insane amount of work into the project. I'm very glad that I am a Patreon supporter, and if you appreciate the Mr. Project and you have the ability to, it would be very cool for you to sign up as well. And as with all monthly support structures like this, even the lowest amount is a giant help for everybody that's on these services. And I think personally, while of course, if you have the ability to, more than the minimum is always very much appreciated, I think it's more important to spread the word as well, though. So if you're a fan of the Mr. Project, please consider signing up, and definitely tell everybody else that's a fan of the Mr. Project. And of course, links to everything are going to be in the description. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks so much to everybody that watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and of course, and especially, thank you to everybody that supports. I just talked about it in regards to Sorg, but I also wanted to thank everybody that supports the RetroRGB channel. And even if you're not in a position to support on a monthly service, please consider just going to retrorgb.com/support and clicking on either the Amazon or eBay links and buying whatever it is that you were going to buy anyway, but then I just get a fraction of a penny out of each one. So it seems kind of silly, and it seems kind of strange to say that, but I do get a lot of very wonderful questions from people asking what's the different ways that they could support, and that is by far the easiest because it doesn't cost you anything, and if enough people do it, it really will absolutely help the channel and help keep all of this stuff alive. The podcast, the behind the scenes work, the development stuff, the videos, everything. So thank you all very much, and I'll see you next week.